Hey guys, tonight we're heading back to a world where the cold seeped through wooden walls, food didn't come from shells, and even survival could feel like a quiet kind of victory. You're standing in the aftermath of a Viking raid. Smoke still lingers in the air. The earth is wet beneath your feet. Mud and ashes pressed together by boots that came and went before dawn. That quiet you hear? It isn't peace. It's exhaustion. It's the silence after shouting, after fear, after fire. You probably won't survive this. But for now, you're still here. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere far off in time or place, post your location and local time in the comments. I always love seeing where this little village of ours is tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You lie on your side, back pressed against cold earth, your hands still stained from throwing mud on a neighbor's burning roofs. The fire didn't care about your effort. It took the roof anyway. Your village wasn't rich, so there's nothing left to loot. The raiders came anyway. Not for silver, but for food, for tools, for warmth. And when they couldn't carry more, they took satisfaction instead. Just because. There's no breakfast waiting. No firewood stacked. The hens are gone, either scattered into the forest or tucked under Viking arms. One pig remains, wandering confused among charred fence posts, but you don't want to look at it. Not yet. Not while the sky is still this color, gray with a streak of pink like a healing bruise. Your stomach complains before your mouth opens. The sound is oddly loud in the stillness, but no one laughs. Everyone feels it. It's strange how quickly routine evaporates. The place you used to wake up in, the place you knew by the scent of peat smoke and wet wool, that's gone. In the new place you're in, it's not really a place yet. Just a shape left behind when the familiar was pulled away. Someone coughs. Someone else sobs once softly, then stops. The chickens used to announce the day. Now it's pain. A boy nearby tries to chew a handful of grass. Not to eat, just to pretend. His mother doesn't stop him. You sit up slowly, hands resting on your knees. The morning dew has mixed with soot on your tunic. It sticks to your fingers like paste. The smell is part sea salt, part burned thatch, and part something you don't want to identify. They say the raiders worship other gods, that they sail with the wind and fight with fire. But in the end, they eat like you. They hunger like you. And after their feast, your famine begins. That's the rule, isn't it? What they feast on, you fast from. You try not to think about what was in the granary, about how much you'd saved, how much you didn't hide well enough. You glance around. No one's in charge. Not yet. The elders are whispering. The children wash their mouths. Historians still argue whether raids like these were yearly punishments or opportunistic thefts. Whether the Vikings were cruel invaders or just hungry farmers with better boats. It doesn't matter today. The sky is pale, and you have no idea what you'll eat. The dew dries by the minute. You rise stiffly, bones creaking louder than your leather soles. You skim the space where the hearth used to be. It's just blackened stones now like a mouth missing teeth. The ground is soft here, mud mixed with straw and crushed barley. You find a broken bowl and instinctively sniff it. It smells like someone's yesterday. Nothing useful. Your body wants routine, wants to grind grain, wants to fetch water, wants to stir a pot. But there's no grain. The pot's cracked, and the well, it's shallow and brackish from the ash. Still, your hands start to move. They brush away debris, seek something edible among the ruins. They work like memory does, fumbling through what used to be. Someone mutters behind you. Something about starting over. As if hunger takes breaks. As if starting is optional. But you've done this before, haven't you? Not this raid. Not this village. But this moment. The aching, confused, heart-beating survival moment. The one where the world doesn't care whether you're brave, or clever, or kind. It just asks, can you stay? Can you keep going? You touch your fingers to your lips. Taste the dust. Taste the ash. Taste yesterday. It's not much, but you're alive. And that's something. You wake the next morning to the sound of boots and mud, and the heavy clatter of shields stacked beside the longhouse wall. Sunlight slants through the smoke hole above, casting thin gold lines over woven mats and half-eaten roots left from last night. You sit up slowly, back aching slightly, head still full of flickering dreams, smoke, sails, and the echo of someone singing off-key. The raiders are home. They'd left days ago with full bellies and heavy blades. They've come back with torn cloaks, bruises, and that hollow look behind the eyes that doesn't go away after your first fight. There's no treasure card, no heaped up silver or barley sacks brimming with stolen grain. Just a few dented helmets, the sheep someone must have dragged back through the shallows, then a carved cup you suspect came from someone's burned altar. You watch them slouch into the central fire circle, silent except for the creak of worn leather and the occasional grunt. One of them coughs up a mouthful of river water and laughs like he forgot how. No speeches, no psalms. The raid did not go well, and now the village has to feed them. It's a strange rhythm, this life of feast and famine. Historians still argue whether Viking raids brought real prosperity to the Norse homelands or were mostly symbolic, ceremonial bursts of violence meant to prove honor more than feed the family. What we do know, most days were quiet, and food was not. You're already on your feet, lacing up your shoes with strips of wool and dried sinew. Your task isn't glorious, but it's necessary. You join the morning cooking team, half elders, half strappy kids, and a few of you in between that didn't raid, didn't lead, just stayed. The longhouse smells of wet ash, walled onions, and the sour tang of last week's mead. Someone has dumped 3 cracked pots of barley onto a cloth. Another lad is chopping seaweed with a blunt bone knife. It's a disaster. You're handed a list. It isn't written down, few can write here, but it's memorized, passed down through seasons of not quite starving. Roots, berries, mushrooms, maybe an egg if the hens haven't scattered in the rain. The sea's too rough today for fishing, so foraging is your only hope. You sling a basket over your back, wicker, patched with nettle twine, and head for the woods. The wind carries the scent of brine and pine as you walk the ridge path. Below, the fjord sparkles like hammered iron under the sun. You step carefully, scanning the underbrush. Wild garlic, dandelion leaves, even a bit of sorrel. A treasure trove. The earth offers, but never for free. You dig gently, fingernails muddy, humming under your breath. An hour later, you're deep in the thicket, hands full of stinging nettle, useful, but painful, when you find something rare, a small patch of golden chanterelles. Beautiful, fragrant, curling like waves of butter. A real treat. You smile, even though no one's around to see it. Then, a rustle. You freeze. It's not a bear, thankfully, but it is worse in some ways. It's Bjorn, the one who skipped the raid claiming spiritual illness. You'd believe him if spiritual didn't mean he spends every feast night in the mead shed pretending to hear the gods when he's just very, very drunk. He eyes your mushrooms. You eyes emptied hands. There's a tense pause. He smiles. You do not smile back. Eventually, he grunts something about sharing among kin, but you keep the mushrooms. You're not proud of it, but survival is sometimes just quiet refusal. Back at the village, the cauldrons are heating. You toss your finds into the pile. There's a woman stirring a stew that smells surprisingly good. Onions, a bit of dried fish, some dried berries to sweeten the bitterness. She drops in your chanterelles last, with a nod that feels like gratitude, but might just be relief. Dinner that night is solemn. Wooden bowls are passed around. No one complains, but everyone eats slowly, savoring even the thin broth, the occasional softness of barley, or the surprise or root chunk that hasn't boiled into mush. You sit near the hearth, legs stretched out, bowl warm in your lap. The skull begins to speak, low and rhythmic, voice rough as old rope. He tells the tale of a shield maiden who tricked the gods by cooking a stew so delicious it made even Odin weep. Apparently, the secret ingredient was fermented gooseberries. You wonder if the gods have better luck foraging than you do. Someone laughs. Someone else sneezes and spills their stew. It's peaceful in a strange way, like everyone's too tired to pretend anymore. That night, lying back in your mat of bundled straw, you let your thoughts drift. You think about the food, not just the meal, but the effort it took to bring it here. The hands that dug, the backs that carried, the simple knowledge of what root goes with what leaf, and which mushrooms won't kill you in your sleep. These are things no saga sings about, but they matter. Some say the real wealth of a raid is gold. Others say it's the stories. But maybe, just maybe, it's the handful of wild greens you found before the frost set in. And that's the thought that carries you into sleep. You rise again, this time before the sun. The air is colder, sharper now. Your breath leaves in soft puffs that hang a moment before dissolving. Somewhere beyond the trees, a raven calls. It's always the ravens. Early, watchful, hungry. You come to admire them. They're like you in that way. You step outside the longhouse and pull your wool cloak tighter. It still smells faintly of smoke and salt. The village is stirring, just barely. A few fires are being coaxed back to life. Someone is already at the well, drawing up a wooden bucket with a tired rhythm. You're headed to the drying racks by the shore. The raid may have failed, but the herring run didn't. Dozens of fish, glinting silver and stiff with cold, were hauled in yesterday. If they're not salted or smoked today, they'll rot. So here you are, an apprentice to salt and time. Your fingers work fast, even through the numbness. You split fish open from gills to tail, laying them flat on woven reeds. Salt, harvested weeks ago in clay bowls by the shore, is rubbed in with calloused thumbs. The rats creak gently in the breeze, a chorus of drying wood and seagull cries. There's something meditative about the process. Gut, rinse, split salt, over and over, until your arms ache. But there's quiet pride here, too. These fish may be dull compared to silver goblets or amber beads, but they'll feed a dozen mouths. Maybe more, and that's worth something. One of the elders walks past, carrying a small jar of honey. He's smiling. Not at you, necessarily, but at the world. You nod. He nods back. That's the exchange. No need for words. You keep working. As the sun climbs, the fog lifts and the sea glitters. A group of children is gathering by the boat frames, dragging a half-finished net between them like a prize toy. One shouts something about a sea serpent. The others shriek and run. No one believes it's true, but still, no one dares check the shallows. Historians still argue whether Norse children were more involved in daily labor or more free roaming. You recall someone saying once. You smile, judging by the muddy footprints and the broken fish basket behind the kids. Probably both. Eventually, you're relieved by another pair of hands. You stretch, roll your neck, and wander toward the woods again. This time not for food, but for firewood. The trees here are mostly pine and birch, their trunks white and peeling like old skin. You carry a hatchet, its handle smooth from generations of palms. There's already a pile of kindling by a stump, left by whoever was out here yesterday. You add to it. The logs you split are damp inside, sticky with sap, but they'll dry soon enough near the hearth. Then, as you return to the village, arms full of fragrant wood, you pass the grave site. It's quiet here, bordered by stones and low herbs. Nothing elaborate, just a few carved markers, some old ruins worn down by wind and time. You pause for breath. One of the mounds is new. The dirt's still soft. No one talks much about who was lost on the raid. There's a kind of silence around it, like a cloak everyone shares. But here's the truth of it, laid out plainly in the earth. Some did not come back. You place a pine cone on the mound. It's a small gesture, but one that matters more than words. Back home, the hearth crackles. Someone is brewing something, mead, probably, or nettle tea. You sit near the fire, warming your palms, letting the heat sink into your joints. A neighbor leans over and hands you a piece of dried cod. It's leathery but filling. You chew slowly, savoring the salt and smoke. Another hands you a boiled root. You don't ask what kind. That's not to. Someone begins tuning a lyre. Its strings hum softly, out of tune, but still lovely. The player, a girl with hair like autumn straw, starts a tune you almost recognize. Something about the sea, or the stars, or maybe just the feeling of being small under both. You lay your head leaned back against the wall. The firelight dances across the thatch, drawing flickering lines that mimic waves. Your legs are sore, your eyes heavy. It's been a long day. Not dramatic, Not heroic, just long. And yet, there's satisfaction in that. In the small things done right. In feeding others. In warming them all. In placing a pine cone on fresh earth, because someone had to. They may not carve your name into the stones. They may not sing songs about the drying of herring or the stacking of firewood. But tomorrow will come, and there will be fish to eat and warmth in the hearth. Because of you, the morning after a failed raid feels different than any other. It's not quite shame that hangs over the village. More like the fog that clings to your boots. Quiet, persistent, inescapable. Even those who stayed behind carry it in their shoulders. The sounds of chores feel softer. Voices are more hushed. And yet, life demands rhythm, and rhythm always returns. You wait to the scrape of a clay spoon in a wooden pot. It's porridge today. Again, barley, mostly boiled until it blisters and thickens. You eat slowly, blowing on each bite even though it's not that hot. Someone sprinkled wild herbs over it. You're not sure if that was meant to improve the flavor or hide the grain's bitterness, but it helps. The longhouse is quieter than usual. Fewer bodies, fewer stories. You miss the sound of laughter, even if it was crude and half-drunk most nights. There's an empty cot near the fire pit that hasn't been touched since the raid. A strap of cloth still hangs from the corner. You try not to look at it. After breakfast, you walk to the storage shed. Today's task, mending the sacks. The grain bags, woven from flax and lined with soft leather, were torn when someone tripped in the dark during last week's storm. You settle in near the doorway where light pours through, threading coarse twine with a curved needle. As you stitch, your mind wanders, because mending things, unlike fighting, gives your thoughts room to breathe. You think of the raid again. You weren't there, but you've heard the whispers. A bad landing. Unexpected resistance. No treasure. No captives. Just a wet retreat and some missing faces. There's a growing debate among the elders. You've heard. Historians still argue whether Norse raids were primarily about conquest or necessity. Around here, it's not so academic. It's about mouths to feed and winters to survive. Outside, a rooster crows, oblivious. Then another. A brief, ridiculous duel. You smile. Later, a boy approaches with a busted spear shaft. You hold it like it might still bite. You take it gently, examine the crack, and nod toward the pile of straight branches near the shed. He's quiet, this one. Quick with his hands, slow with his words. You like that. Together, without much talk, you strip bark and shave wood until the replacement shaft slides into place like it always belonged. You give him the fixed spear, and for a second, just a second, he looks proud enough to burst. Then he nods, awkwardly, and runs off toward the others. It's small, but that moment stays with you. Around midday, the air warms. A few people are bringing in seaweed, bundles of the slick, green stuff draped over pools like wet laundry. It'll dry out, then be added to the animal feed or the ash pits for fertilizing next year's barley. Not glamorous but vital. Someone tries to joke about it. We feast like kings tonight. Seaweed soup, then hope. But no one really laughs. The joke is too close to true. And yet, no one complains. Because complaining is a luxury. Back inside the shed, you sort the tools. Most are simple. Bone needles, iron fish hooks, hand axes with smooth handles. One object stands out. A carved wooden scoop with a faded sun etched into the handle. It's been around longer than you. Maybe longer than anyone here. You hold it for a moment, feeling the grooves under your thumb. Who carved it? A grandmother? A warrior with a softer side? Or someone like you? Just try to leave something behind that wasn't broken? You place it gently back on the shelves. By late afternoon, the sky grows gray again. The storm is likely. You've helped tether the goats and bring the last of the drying herbs inside. Sage, yarrow, maybe some thyme, though it's hard to tell when it's this brittle. One bunch crumbles in your fingers. You sweep it away. You're not sure how they'll stretch the stores for winter. Not just the food, but the strength, the laughter, the hope. Still, no one says we can't. You just keep doing the next small task. Evening comes, then the clouds break. Not with rain, but with orange. The whole sky turns copper for a moment, the sea catching its glow like a mirror. The village softens under it, shadows growing longer, warmer. A child calls her name and hands you a rough-cut bowl. It's steaming. A bit of root stew, flavored with fish broth and wild onions. It's humble but hearty. You take it with a grateful nod. You sit by the doorway of a long house to eat. Behind you, someone is humming. You don't know the psalm, but you recognize the tone. It's not a victory chant, not a morning dirge. It's just something to fill the space. You breathe in the sea air, then look out over the bay. The water is calm again. No sails, no distant threats, just gulls and wind. The raid was a failure. That's true. But the meals go on. The fire stays lit. The walls stand. So do you. You don't sleep through the night anymore. Not all the way. Too many dreams made of salt and fire. Too many nights waiting for boats to land where they shouldn't. So you lie awake sometimes, listening to the roof timbers creak, then the faint waves pressing against the fjord's stony ribs. But tonight, you sleep a little deeper because today was full of mending, and something about sewing sacks together makes you feel like you're holding the world from unraveling. When dawn returns, it's with a hush. No shouting, no barking, no hammering just yet. Just the muted clink of someone turning a pot over the coals and the occasional yawn of someone still half dreaming. You rise slowly, joints stiff from the cold and from years of repetition. You've slept on the same mat for so long, it's shaped itself to your body. Outside, the frost hasn't quite melted. The grass sparkles like a warning. You draw your cloak tighter, the wool scratchy but warm. It smells of smoke and sea salt, like most things here. The day's work begins again. Not with glory, but with gathering. You head toward the field edge where the sea kale grows wild. It's not a crop, not officially, but no one minds when you pick it. The leaves are thick and bitter, but boiled right, they bulk out a meal and even taste a little like something expensive. You're not alone. A couple of elders are already picking, their fingers quick despite the chill. You nod to them, but don't speak. Out here, the wind does most of the talking. One of them points to the sky. See that? He murmurs. You squint. A wedge of geese, flying south. Not unusual, but still a signal. Winter's moving faster this year, he says, almost to himself. You both know what that means. In the afternoon, a group gathers by the fire pit to repair fishing nets. You join them, sitting cross-legged in the sun. The work is slow and tangling, the kind that twists your wrists and tests your patience. But there's laughter now, bubbling up in small, cautious bursts. Someone tells a story about a goat that got loose in the smokehouse and emerged smelling like cured ham. You smile, then actually laugh, just a little. One woman threads a bone needle through the net and says, historians still argue whether the Norse diet was mostly meat or mostly grain. I say, depends who's telling the story. You nod. It always depends on who's hungry. As the nets grow whole again, the rhythm settles in. Not pull, tighten, pass. It's almost musical, like a quiet psalm played on twine and calloused hands. That night, dinner is a triumph of invention. Flatbread cooked on stones, stretched thin like hopes during lean months. A smear of fish paste, spiced with dry garlic and something sharp you can't name. Pickled roots, sour and sweet. And for once, a tiny chunk of dried apple, cut into slivers so everyone gets one. You chew slowly, savoring the apple like a gift from the gods. It tastes like summer pretending to be here still. Afterward, a few of the younger ones try to start a song. It's ragged, off-key, and exactly right. You hum along under your breath, tapping your cup against your knee. The song drifts into a kind of chant, then fades as one by one, the fire watch yawns and heads for sleep. You stay up just a little longer. By the embers, one of the elders sharpens a knife, the rhythm familiar. He looks up at you, squints, and says, you know, some say the gods reward survival more than valor. Not in the sagas, of course, but in the weather, in the way the storms pass you by. You nod. Not every victory is loud. Eventually, you lie down again. Your back finds its groove in the mat. Your blanket wraps around you like a shoreline. And though your belly isn't full, it isn't empty. And though your body aches, it isn't broken. The stars are hidden behind a veil of clouds tonight, but you don't need them to find rest. You've mapped enough constellations in your own calluses. Tomorrow, there will be more small tasks, more gathering, more mending, more waiting for the winds to change. But for now, your breath slows. The world narrows to warmth and shadow. In somewhere far away, geese keep flying south. You close your eyes. The morning is quieter than usual. No gulls, no splashes, no shouting from the upper path. Just the soft crackle of frost beneath your feet and the gentle puff of breath escaping your lips like smoke. You stretch, then bend down to feel the frozen ground. It's not quite winter yet, but it's knocking. There's no raid today. That fact alone is worth a breath of gratitude, even if the day ahead holds its own set of chores. You glance toward the communal house where breakfast is already being prepared. It's nothing fancy, nothing ever is, but warm porridge simmering in a blackened iron pot smells better than gold. The woman stirring it hums to herself, the same tune every morning. No one knows where she learned it. Some say it's from the east, where the rivers coil like serpents. Others say she made it up when her husband didn't come back from the sea. You sit on a stone and wait your turn. Your bowl is handed to you, steaming, full of barley and traces of dried onion, with a drizzle of leftover animal fat pooled at the top like an offering. You eat slowly, letting each bite linger. On a good day, you might taste the memory of meat. Someone nearby mutters, "Remember last year's winter? When we made soup from pine bark and snow?" Someone else chuckles. "Yeah, and I still haven't forgiven that tree." You smile. It's not the food, it's the familiarity, the rhythm, the way even the hard meals bind people together like knots in a net. After breakfast, you walk along the edge of the fjord, following the same trail you always do. The tide is low, revealing muddy ground littered with seaweed, driftwood, and the occasional fish skeleton. You poke at the muck with a stick, not expecting much. Then you spot a small oyster shell wedged under a rock. It's empty, of course, but once it wasn't. And once, someone probably celebrated finding it, adding it to a pot, tossing in weeks and herds, maybe even a splash of beer if they had enough to spare. A luxury still, a once-in-a-decade moment. Historians still argue whether the Norse consumed shellfish regularly or only when desperate. You smile to yourself. Either way, you'd eat it. Later, you help gather firewood. The forest is thinning near the edge of the village, but enough low branches and dry bark remain to feed the hearths for a few more weeks. You carry a bundle on your back, your hands wrapped in linen to avoid splinters. The trees whisper above you, bare now, except for the stubborn evergreens. One of them creaks as the wind picks up and you pause to listen. Sometimes the forest feels older than the stones. One of the boys chases a squirrel, slips in the mud, and nearly drops the firewood. He laughs at himself, smearing dirt across his face like war paint. You shake your head fondly. He still has teeth, still has hope. Back in the village, a mother is showing her daughter how to dry fish. The little girl wrinkles her nose at the smell, but does as she's told. Fish guts, strung on a line, will turn into soup someday. Even the straps matter. You pass the smith's corner. The forge is cold now, but the tools hang on the wall like sleeping warriors. A cracked anvil rests in the corner, still serviceable, barely. Its dents mark years of weapons, hinges, and cooking knives. None of it glamorous. All of it necessary. Dinner that night is simple again. Dried cod, tough and salty, softened in milk if you're lucky. A handful of boiled grains. No feast, but no hunger either. You choose swallow sigh. You've heard stories of banquet halls in faraway kingdoms where the floors shine and the food flows like rivers. But you also know those kings sleep with daggers under their pillows and never trust their brothers. You'll take a crack bowl and quiet hearth. That night, your dreams are strange. You're walking through the forest, but the trees are all fish, swaying with seaweed hair and blinking eyes. You laugh in the dream, which wakes you, still smiling. The wind is picking up outside. Your roof rattles. Somewhere, a latch slaps against the post. But you're warm, and your stomach is lined with grain, and your legs ache in that good, burned way. You lie back down. The world, for now, is safe. The next day begins not with light, but with sound. The faint ringing of a distant bell, soft and dull like a stone dropped in snow. You sit up slowly. The air inside your house is cold enough to bite, but you're getting used to that. Winter doesn't announce itself all at once. It seeps in like a rumor. You pull on your tunic and wrap a fur cloak over your shoulders. The fire burned low in the night, and there's barely a glow left beneath the ashes. You nudge the embers with a stick, add a few twigs, then breathe carefully into the coals. A small flame blossoms, hesitant but willing. Like you. Outside, the sky is a dull pewter, clouds heavy with something undecided, snow or rain. You squint toward the mountains, then to the sea. The longboats rest quietly by the shore, their carved dragon heads looking less fierce in the gray light. Even the gods, it seems, take breaks. Breakfast is a hard crust of barley bread, soaked in a bit of sour milk. You eat while walking, following the path behind the granary, where a few of the older villagers are sorting dried grains and checking for mold. You offer to help, settling into the rhythm of sifting and sniffing and setting aside anything that's gone to rot. One of the elders tells a story as she works, something about a time when the grain spoiled early and they had to mix it with moss and call it cake. You ask what it tasted like. She grins with free teeth and says, disappointment. Still, you work carefully. Mold spreads like bad gossip. Quietly, quickly. One spoiled bag can ruin a season's effort. The scholar once wrote that Viking communities stored their grain in woven birch bark containers, stacked neatly like prayers. But historians still debate whether these were common or reserved for the wealthier households. Either way, your granary smells like patience and planning and mouse droppings. Later in the morning, the child brings in a rabbit snared near the tree lee. It's small, barely worth the trouble of skinning, but everyone cheers anyway. You help dress it, fingers numb but steady. The fur will be dried, the bones boiled, the meat shared. By midday, the clouds have decided sleet. You huddle in the longhouse with others, the air thick with smoke and the smell of damp wool. Someone plays a bone flute, slow and uncertain, while others mend clothing, patch boats, or stir pots. You work needle and thread for a torn sleeve, your stitches crooked but strong. A woman beside you weaves a basket from willow branches, humming a lullaby you think you heard as a child. Or maybe you dreamed it. Either way, it's comforting. Your hands cramp in the cold, but you keep working. It's how the time passes. The stew that evening is mostly turnips and greens. The rabbit meat stretches thin across the pot, each piece smaller than a thumbnail. But the broth is hot, and the bowl warms your fingers as much as your belly. Someone mentions that long ago, raiders returned with sacks of foreign spices, pepper, cinnamon, even sugar. You laugh. The only thing sweet in your world is memory. As you lie down for the night, your body tired in that honest, heavy way, you think again of the longboats. Of the way they sit like sleeping beasts on the shoreline, waiting for command. Not today, not tomorrow, but maybe soon. Because raids don't just feed the body, they feed the pride. And even in sleep, that hunger doesn't vanish. But for now, you have warmth. You have a roof. You have turnip stew. You drift off to the sound of sleet tapping like tiny drums on a roof, steady and soft. It's enough. You wake to silence. The sleet has stopped, and in its place a soft blanket of snow lies over everything. Clean, quiet, forgiving. The village feels paused, like someone has taken a deep breath and hasn't let out yet. Even the animals are hushed. You step outside, boats crunching gently on the crust of white, your breath painting little ghosts in the air. The chores don't wait, of course. Snow or no snow, there's water to be fetched and firewood to be split. You haul a bucket toward the well, careful not to slip on the icy path. The rope creaks as you lower the pail, the wood around it frosted like cake. Your fingers ache before you're halfway back, and the cold finds its way into your bones like a secret. But you manage because you always do. In the distance, a thin plume of smoke rises from the blacksmith hut. You make your way there, hoping for a moment of warmth, or at least conversation. Inside, the air is thick with heat and metal and something else, something ancient. Sparks fly as the blacksmith hammers a bent nail into submission. He doesn't greet you, but he doesn't mind your presence either. You watch, fascinated as iron glows and bends under practiced hands. Every tool has a memory, he mutters, half to himself. Even nails. Especially nails. You nod, not entirely sure what he means, but feeling it matters anyway. Historians still argue whether most Viking blacksmiths were full-time craftsmen or simply farmers with forges. The truth is probably both. Just like most people here, doing what they can when they can to hold things together. Later, y'all prepare a cracked shield. Not for war, at least not yet, but for practice drills. Young boys in the village are starting to train again, running in the snow with wooden swords and wool-stuffed helmets, laughing louder than they should. One of them falls forward and straightens his knee. He bites his lip, trying not to cry. You kneel beside him, pat the snow off his clothes, and say, "Worse things happen when the stew burns." It's not wise, but makes him smile. There's talk, today, of an early spring raid. Whispers passed over bread crusts and half-frozen ale. The nearby monastery, soft as butter and full of silver. Or so someone claims. You say nothing, but the air feels different, sharper, thinner, like the moment before a hawk dies. After lunch, you help repair fishing nets with two older men, both of whom have been raiding and surviving longer than you've been alive. They talked in half sentences, communicating more with their eyebrows than their words. One of them mentions a village he once saw where the bread was made with powdered fish bones. "Not bad," he says. "Big crunchy." You can't tell if he's joking. By late afternoon, the snow is melting at the edges, dripping from rooftops like a soft apology. You walk along the frozen creek, eyes scanning the treetops. In the thaw, the world feels fragile, like everything might break if you speak too loudly. And yet, there's strength in that fragility. The way reeds bend in wind, but never snap. The way your people, cold, hungry, tired, keep rising anyway. Keep fishing, sowing, chopping, building, raising children in nets, and questions known as answers for. A quiet moment by the creek. Your reflection in the ice, slightly distorted, looking older than yesterday. 9 years, but in weight. You dip a hand into the water, feel the sting, then pull back. Still alive. Still here. That night, the longhouse glows with candlelight. A few families gather for a shared meal. A luxury, really. There's dried fish, some onions, a bit of salt. Not enough to feast, but enough to pretend. Someone carves a riddle into a plank of wood. What has a mouth, but cannot eat? You guess a river, and they nod approvingly. The elders begin to tell stories. Some true, some borrowed, some too old to verify. One tale is about a raid that never happened. The boats sank before they reached the shore. Only the crows came back. You fall asleep to the rhythm of these voices, their cadence like waves on the fjord. Someone is humming a lullaby again. You never quite catch the words, but you don't need to. You're full, not of food, but of something sturdier. Of warmth, of people, of the kind of peace that doesn't sparkle but settles into bones. The kind that carries you through another winter night. The days stretch just a little. You notice it when you step outside before dawn and see that the stars have begun to fade a heartbeat earlier than the day before. The cold still gnaws, but it no longer bites quite so deep. Somewhere inside you, the slow rhythm of survival begins to shift, nudged by the faintest promise of spring. Morning begins, as always, with work. The thatch on the goat shed has loosened, and you're hoisted onto the low roof with a bundle of new straw under one arm and a bone-handled comb in the other. You weave and press, fingers numb, the task repetitive but comforting. That's the thing about hard work. It leaves no room for worry while your hands are busy. Inside the longhouse, someone is boiling seaweed to thicken soup. A few berries, dried last summer, are dropped in like treasure. The children look up hopefully, noses twitching. It's better than bark broth, someone jokes. You're not sure if it is. Historians still debate what a normal Viking diet actually looked like. It varied so much by season, region, and status that there's no clear answer. But they all agree on one thing: nothing was ever wasted. If it grew, swam, or died nearby, it ended up in the stew pot eventually. You take a turn mending tunics. The linen is coarse, patched and repatched, dyed with whatever was handy. Bunion skin, lichen, or rust from old nails soaked in water. One child asks why her shirt smells like the river. You tell her it's because she runs as fast as one. She beams. There's news today, distant, uncertain, like thunder that hasn't reached the hills yet. Another settlement was raided. Not by your people, but by others. Perhaps Danes. Perhaps someone else entirely. Names are tossed around like dry kindling, but none of it lights. The story ends as a shrug. You and a few others walk down to the harbor, just to look at the boats. One is missing a row of planks. Another leans awkwardly against the half-frozen log. You check the ropes, the oars, the carved dragon head on the prow, worn but proud. Always watching. Someone spits into the snow and mutters, "Soon." That's all they say. But the day continues. A young couple is building a new pen for goats, arguing quietly about how high the fence should be. A grandmother teaches her granddaughter how to card wool, smoothing it gently between her palms like a lullaby. You've helped reinforce the wall behind a longhouse where the wind keeps sneaking through. A clay mixture of mud and straw, smeared with the heel of your hand, sets into tiny frozen ridges as you go. It's not beautiful, but it works. Beauty, out here, is a luxury for the sagas. In the afternoon, someone finds a piece of amber in the marsh. A small one, caught in the roots of a willow. It passes from hand to hand, glinting in the gray light. No one says much, but you all feel the same thing. A tiny, golden proof that the earth can still surprise you. Later, the children rehearse a little play, one they made up themselves. It involves a sea serpent, a lost boot, and a heroic turnip farmer. You play the part of the mountain that refuses to move, which involves sitting very still for a very long time. It's oddly relaxing. Before the sun dips, someone begins carving new runes on a standing stone near the village edge. No one knows why. Maybe it's a prayer. Maybe a warning. Maybe just a way to remind time that you were here. The carver pauses often, squinting into the clouds, like he's asking permission. Dinner is meager, but shared. Flatbread baked over coals, dipped in a broth made from whatever was left in the pot. You sip slowly, savoring the warmth more than the taste. A piece of garlic root floats to the top. You grin. Tonight, you're fancy. As night descends, the sky clears unexpectedly, then stars return in force. Glittering, endless, too large to name. Someone says they look like spilled grain. Someone else says they're the eyes of the gods, watching to see who survives the frost. You lie back in the snow for a moment, just watching. Your back sinks into the cold, but your eyes burn with sky. Here, among these people, tired, clever, hungry, generous, you've survived another day. Not by sword or saga, but by stitching shirts, patching walls, melting snow into soup. There's no glory in it, not the kind that fills scrolls. But there's a quiet honor in persistence. The fire's still warm when you slip under the furs. The coals glow like distant suns, and the air smells of smoke, wool, and pine tar. You hear someone whispering a song near the hearth. It's the one you almost remember, the one your grandmother hummed when you were small. You close your eyes. The walls are whole. The wind is still. You made it. The earth is beginning to thaw. You hear it first before you feel it. A subtle, slushy drip from the edge of the roofs. A muffled crack as ice gives way beneath a boot. A crow, calling not with warning, but just because it can. Morning is still gray, still reluctant, but something has shifted. Even the goats seem to know, bleating a little louder, kicking up patches of soggy straw like they're testing the ground for softness. You're up early today, stirring a pot of barley on the hearth. A handful of dried herbs from a pouch. You can't recall what they are, goes in for flavor. The young girl brings over a chunk of dried fish wrapped in linen. You both hesitate for a moment, looking at it. Then you laugh. Better than moss, you murmur. She nods solemnly. A lot better. The stew thickens slowly, but you have time. Around the village, winter's grip loosens finger by finger. Tools once buried in drifts reappear. The smell of damp wood is everywhere. It clings to cloaks, to socks, to the inside of the longhouse walls. Your back aches, and your hands are cracked from weeks of ice and ash. But today, you feel lighter. A boy brings you a cracked piece of pottery. It used to be for salt, he says, as though it still might be. You run your thumb along its edge. Let's give another job, you say. So it becomes a ladle rest, and the boy walks away like he's just saved the kingdom. You remember the raids, not as loud memories, but as aftertastes. The missing men, the silence in the longhouse quarters, the dark tunic left hanging by the door too long. No one talks about it now. Not because it doesn't matter, but because everything here continues anyway. It has to. Historians still argue whether these communities truly saw themselves as warriors or simply survivors who sometimes fought. The stories passed down focus on bravery and conquest, but the hands that told them were often busy weaving nets or baking flatbread. Someone shouts, "The sheep are out again." You grab a stick and join the chase. It's less a rescue mission and more a chaotic dance for the mud. One of the youths kicks a bucket into a snowbank. The bucket wins. Everyone laughs, loud, real from the belly. For a moment, the entire village feels like one family sharing the same joke. At midday, a small boat returns from downriver. It's cargo, firewood, river reeds, and 2 small eels tied to a string. A meager haul, but no one complains. The eels are dropped into a trough of water. The firewood disappears instantly. The reeds will become baskets, mats, or roofing, depending on who needs what first. You pass by the old storyteller's bench, worn smooth by 100 behinds. He's there, as always, whittling another spoon. He holds it up to the light. "Too thin," he says, then starts again. No one needs a new spoon. That's not the point. The evening meal is small, but festive. Thin slices of eel, dried apple, then a sweetened porridge made from a hidden stash of honey. It tastes like the first day of school, like something earned. You sit by the hearth as darkness draws close again. There's singing, soft and low, an old ballad about a woman who tricked a sea spirit into giving her fire. You close your eyes and drift with the tune, letting it carry you past the cracks in the walls, the faint smell of old fur, the creak of logs shifting in the wind. The fire pops. The baby by the hearth lets out a snore too big for his body. A man scratches his beard thoughtfully. Somewhere outside, a fox screams, but from here it sounds like laughter. And suddenly there it is. That feeling again. Not triumph. Not pride. Just presence. The world is difficult, but so are you. And you're still here. You survived winter. You survived hunger. You survived griefs and storms and the things no one ever says out loud. And here you are, patching roofs, stirring pots, laughing at goats, helping children aim spoons. What a strange, beautiful thing survival is. The stars come out slowly tonight, like they're remembering how. You lie back, close your eyes, and smile. So now let all go. Let the weight slip from your shoulders like snow off of falling roofs. You've done enough for today. More than enough. Your hands have worked. Your feet have wandered. Your mind has weathered the ache of another turning season. Breathe in, slow, deep, quiet. Let the air stretch all the way down into your belly. Hold it there for a heartbeat. Then let it go long and easy. The fire's low now. Embers soft like sleepy stars in a dark field. Someone has added a log, just enough to keep the warmth without waking the coals. You're safe here. You're warm. The walls are far away, and even the wind has hushed itself. Think of something simple. A carved spoon, the sway of a boat in quiet water, the echo of a song whose words you barely remember. Let your thoughts drift like smoke, lazy and soft, until even your breath feels distant. There is nothing left to fix tonight. No task waiting, no fire to chase. Just the slow, steady knowing that you are still here. You made it through the day, and the wall still stands. Sleep now, builder. Sleep now,